This is the most famous chess game of all time. It was played between Paul Morphy, who was with white, and Duke Carl II of Brunswick, and a count. So basically, it was two people playing against Morphy. So Morphy starts out with e4, e5, knight f3, and d6, the Philidor defense. It's not entirely accurate, but it's still an opening. And d4 basically questions black's setup, being like, you pushed a pawn, you got your light square bishop blocked, so I'm just going to strike in the center. Bishop g4 just pins the knight. And then we take the pawn, maybe we have some open lines, and it's much better than e5, which looks good because it locks in the center, but this white bishop has a hard time developing to its natural square c4 because it's just blocked in. Okay, so we take the pawn, and then they take our knight. We take back with the queen so as to not damage our pawn structure, and he takes back like this. Okay, so we have two pawns in the center, and our queen's on f3, and we have the bishop pair. Okay, so bishop to c4, and now we're setting up a checkmate threat, so knight f6 blocking it, and then nice little maneuver here, queen b3, which forks the f7 pawn and the b7 pawn. And obviously the f7 pawn is more important because it's close to the king, so he decides to defend that. And the reason why we don't take on b7, because it looks like we just win a rook, because it looks like it's trapped, but then there's queen b4 check, and you are basically forced to take, and then there's this, and it's not bad, but I don't think Morphy wanted to trade off the queens. Okay, so we didn't have that, and he played knight c3, just developing. Now queen b4 wouldn't be possible because it's not a check. Okay, c6. C6 basically protects the b7 pawn. Okay, bishop g5. So we got these laser beam bishops here, which looks very powerful. b5, and this might be the first brilliancy of the game, because you can notice that black's king is in the center, and it can't castle because this bishop is never getting out. If you go here, this knight is unsupported, and this queen has to move if you want to get the bishop out. And obviously you shouldn't castle here because the queen is right there. And black and white can castle anytime. So Morphy decides to sacrifice the knight. Now basically the black king is in lots of trouble. It's in the center and all of white's pieces are pointing at it. So knight d7. And you might notice that both of black's knights are pinned, and this proves to be very good for Morphy because of the amazing move, long castles. After rook d8, protecting this knight furthermore, because notice that this knight was actually never protecting this knight because it's pinned. So this knight was actually hanging when we long castled. So black's rook had to come up and help. And now we sacrifice the rook because after rook takes, this rook is pinned, and you can take advantage of that, which Morphy does with rook d1. This rook can't take because it is pinned. And simply our next move is either going to be this, can't take because of this, and queen e6. And here is where one of the craziest checkmate combinations happens. It's not checkmate, but it can be. Okay, so queen e6 basically looks to trade off and be like, okay, and then I'm going to take because this knight is unpinned. But here Morphy plays bishop takes d7. Now it looks like nothing's wrong, because this knight is unpinned. Now the best move here is to take with the queen, and you'll find out why. Because after knight takes, this is one of the greatest checkmate combinations of all time. We have queen b8. This sacrifices the queen because after knight takes, rook d8 is checkmate. And ever since, this type of checkmate, rook supported by bishop, is called the opera mate. And this game is called the opera game because it was actually played in an opera house.